Have you ever wondered who would be working in the factories and fields if you lived in the early days of America? The answer might surprise you. Step back in time with me to an era where child labor wasn't just common, it was practically a given. Picture children, some as young as 4 or 5, not playing or learning, but laboring in factories, mills, and a myriad of other businesses. Imagine tiny hands meant for holding toys, operating complex machinery, or doing strenuous farm work. The reasons were complex yet simple. Families were large and resources were scarce. Every pair of hands, no matter how small, were required to keep the family afloat. Farms needed tending, chores needed doing, and there just weren't enough adults to go around. This was the harsh reality for many children during the Puritan era, a time when child labor was seen as a necessary evil. But what was life really like for these child laborers during the Puritan era? Well, the truth might be a little hard to swallow. Children, some as young as 4 or 5, were expected to contribute to the family's income. They were engaged in a variety of work, from tending to the animals and crops on the farm, to working in factories and mills. The work was grueling, and the hours, long. A typical day would start at the crack of dawn and end late into the evening, but this was not seen as exploitation. No, it was considered a necessary part of life. In the tight-knit Puritan communities, everyone was expected to contribute in some way. And this extended to the children as well. While we may shudder at the thought, it's important to remember that this was seen as completely normal during the Puritan era. So, how did we go from accepting child labor as a necessary evil to banning it entirely? Well, the road to reform wasn't a straightforward one. It was a journey marked by tireless efforts, heart-wrenching sacrifices, and a relentless pursuit of justice. The first significant stride towards reform came with the Factory Act of 1841. This law prohibited the employment of children under the age of 9 in textile mills, and reduced the working hours for those aged between 9 and 13 to a maximum of 48 hours per week. A step in the right direction, indeed, but still a far cry from the protections we see today. The real change began to take shape in the late 19th century, with the rise of several reform movements. One of the key figures in this era was Lewis Hine, a sociologist and photographer. Hine used his camera as a tool for social reform, capturing the harsh realities of child labor and bringing them into the public eye. His poignant images stirred the conscience of a nation, sparking a wave of public outcry and demands for reform. In response to this growing pressure, the Keating-Owen Act was passed in 1916, prohibiting goods made by child labor from interstate commerce. Though it was later struck down by the Supreme Court, it played a pivotal role in shaping public opinion and policy. The Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 was the real game-changer. It established the first federal child labor laws in the United States, setting minimum ages for employment and hours of work for children. And so, through decades of struggle and advocacy, child labor gradually became a relic of the past. Each law, each photograph, each voice raised in protest, played a part in reshaping societal norms and protecting the rights of children. Thanks to the tireless efforts of these reformers, child labor is now a thing of the past in America, giving children the chance to grow up and pursue their dreams. So, what can we take away from this journey through the history of child labor in America? Our voyage through time has allowed us to see the stark realities of early America, where the work of tiny hands was commonplace. In the Puritan era, children as young as 4 or 5 were not strangers to the grueling work in factories, mills, and family farms. Child labor was seen as a necessary evil, a grim testament to the harshness of life during those times. But, as we moved forward, we also witnessed the dawn of reform. Tireless advocates fought for the rights of these young laborers, pushing for change and the banishment of child labor. Their efforts were not in vain, as today's children have the freedom to dream, learn, and grow, unburdened by the weight of adult responsibilities. As we look back on this dark period of our history, we can be grateful for how far we've come and continue to strive for the protection of children everywhere.